Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 458 of the Dead Robot Society. Terry Mixon here, joining me, Paul E. Cootley. How you doing, man?
What's up?
I
live.
got nothing to say to that.
I live. I breathe. I repeat really bad beer commercials from the 1990s, and I write. So that's what I do. But wise.
If we're gonna go bad commercials, why not? It's better than trying to be a Clydesdale.
I got the feet for it. I got the feet for it. You know, if you've ever heard me walk, I mean, it's kind of difficult. There are some people who have a soft walk, but even when I was glide stepping for marching band, which is this thing you have to do where you kind of roll your feet constantly.
I was in marching band.
Yeah.
I'm completely aware.
Because you got to keep the instruments, from bobbing up and down when you're trying to play them. And no, I'm not trying to do something sexual here. Anyway, even when I was glide stepping, I sounded like machine gun fire. So there you go. How are you?
I'm doing good. Wrapped up part one of The Secret Project, which I've revealed as being the novel Heart of Vengeance that I am co-authoring with Glenn Stewart.
Yay.
So that's fun. It'll go off to the copy editor the Thursday of this week. And it'll probably be out by the end of the month.
So that's going to be an indie title?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And
he's responsible for the publishing of it.
So it's actually a prequel to another book he already published, correct?
It is not. Something completely unrelated.
Okay. Never mind then.
What you're thinking of is the fact that I said that this novel took something that he wrote when he was 19 and is splitting it into two novels and expanding it. So there's going to be a second book in this series, at least at a minimum, because that's what the contract calls for. And there may be more. That depends on how well they do and whether he feels, the urge to do more.
Okay. I'm with you now.
That's a future business discussion that the two of us will end up having when the time is appropriate and we have enough data to make a decision.
Understood.
It's been a pleasure working with him so far. It's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty awesome.
It's all very polite.
When you have a good co-author relationship. And how often were you guys talking during this?
Fairly often.
Okay. I think that makes a big difference. So
this may shock you, but there was an outline involved. An outline that I actually contributed to. That I completely ignored when the time came.
Oh my God, Terry's become a pod person.
I know, it's awful, isn't it?
The man who constantly screams and rails against the need for outlines.
It's true.
Who's outlining?
I would have been happy to do it without it. And basically, once I actually got into the rewriting, I pretty much ignored it anyway. So,
so you did the Paul Cooley outline the book, and then throw it away.
Pretty much. I did hit the major points that he and I agreed on.
Right.
Because, there's a co-author. He kind of expects you to hit, the major points that you both agree on.
Yeah, I've always wanted to have a conversation with Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child about how they do their co-authoring stuff. I don't know how I would get a hold of those bozos, but it'd be really interesting to interview a co-author team that's been, 13, 14 books, and obviously are very successful at what they do, and also have, books that they write themselves. So it'd be kind of fun to see that. Be kind of fun to talk to that. So, hey, Booker, get on that.
I'll make a note.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
I'm sure we'd have much luck getting them on. Maybe we'd probably have, better luck getting, James Preston or what's his name? James Patterson, and one of his guys come on. He would just send his minion and put a hand sock puppet up. This is James Patterson.
That is very likely. And then try and sell us his how to write a bestseller by having somebody else do it.
He really should go ahead and modify that to how to write a bestseller when you've got a sock puppet as your co-author.
There you go. This is my sock puppet. He does all the writing. I just stick my name on it. Yes,
but you better wash your hands when you're done with that.
Oh, suddenly I'm reminded of the street. So now
what else is going on I've got that out. I just finished writing a short story for the upcoming book 1 through 3 omnibus of Empire of Bones. It's off to my first reader. I should have it back in the next couple of days, and I'll send it off for copy editing. By the end of the month, I should have that out as well. It's a Princess Kelsey story called Fist of God. So you can only imagine the chaos that ensues.
I will imagine nothing.
They're going to be able to rebuild that warehouse. Seriously. It may take a couple of months, but it's doable.
No, I don't believe any of it.
Oh, and I got to kill J.R. Handley as part of it.
Hey, man, that's anytime you can kill one of our patrons, that's always a good thing.
He said to make it as bloody as possible, so I made it completely bloodless.
Yeah! Love it. People I killed in the black, they're like, oh, I'm in the black. I'm going to get murdered horribly. No, you're going to get dissolved.
In this case, plasma. Nothing left. Poof.
Oy vey. Oy vey.
Not a drop of blood or flesh or clothing. Nothing. It erased him from, I think I used that exact phrase. The plasma erased him from existence.
That just sounds, glorious and horrible. I like it.
Very, very permanent.
Very permanent. Yeah. You can just resurrect him. No. They've been reduced to particles. It's not happening.
I think the way I wrote that particular scene was that she shot him and not only obliterated him, obliterated everyone standing near him, obliterated the thing behind him. It was one of those sort of things.
So basically obliteration.
Yes. A plasma cannon kind of does that to you.
Yeah, I think especially if it was a close range, but who am I kidding? Well, I have realized my deepest fear.
You're coming out of the closet.
No.
You're declaring yourself a puppet lover.
Well, we already knew that. That's no secret. I was working on destruction, and now I flipped over completely to flames. So I am, I guess
you went down in flames. Is that what you're saying?
Shut up. I've written 12,000 words since I got back from vacation on flames, and it's clicking big time. I think if I keep going at this rate, I should have it finished this weekend.
Holy cow. How long have you been writing flames?
This is, it's been 4 years now.
Wow.
And it kept getting interrupted. It just kept getting interrupted by everything.
Rightus interruptus.
Rightus interruptus. That's right. So, anyway, I'm moving toward the final conflagration. That's how I'm referring to it, which is the last 15, 20,000 words. And the body count is really starting to show up. Finally, we're getting real deaths now. It's time to really go hog wild.
It's not real until you depopulate small towns in Idaho.
No, it's not real until you start depopulating wide swaths of Houston.
Wait a minute. When did we transition back to the black again?
That's what's scary. Is I've always thought about this. It's like, and we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it last week's episode, actually. You constantly have the books set in the same place, an ongoing series. Why is he always writing about Cleveland or Chicago or New York City? Why does he never go outside of that? One day people are going to be like, why the hell does Paul always end up in Houston? It's going to happen that way. Probably already has.
Well, it's weird, considering that Jim Butcher writes about Chicago. And as I recall, he's never even been there.
Yeah, last I heard, the last book signing I was at, he mentioned that he had never actually been there, which is too funny for words. But yeah, it's just one of those things I find kind of amusing. I don't have another setting for any of my Fiend's Tales outside of Houston. I don't know why that is.
So you know what you need to go ahead and put into Flames here at the end. You need to go ahead and just as a passing moment somewhere in the end, have him cross paths with one of the main characters from the black and go, sup? Just pass up.
No, different universes, different timelines.
But it'd be so funny. You couldn't even get by without mentioning it by name. Just, describe the character and have him walk past someone dressed like somebody that's in the black. What's up?
Nah, there's not enough physical descriptions of that. I don't think anybody get it.
That's sad.
It'd be fun to do though. Well, I might put a reference. Well, I kind of already have put references to tattoo and closet treats in this book. So people who have read those are going to be like, oh. And there's another thing which I'm not going to mention here because I think people who have read my work are going to read this book and go, what the fuck is this? It'll be fun. So anyway, I'm storming through it. I'm trying to get it finished. I'll dive back into destruction as well. I know what I'm going to do there. So I think I'm hopeful that I'll be able to start cranking on that, but I want to get this first draft done, out of my life, over, finito. So then I can go back and start fixing it and getting it ready for whatever it is we're going to do with it. So, which we'll see.
Rock on, sir.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I went through a phase where I probably had a couple of bad weeks of writing, and now it's like for whatever reason the brain is cleared up and I'm back at it. So I'm happy.
The other thing I've got going on is Reconnaissance and Force. The audiobook is at ACX going through the approval process.
Still?
So maybe another couple of weeks and there'll be another Veronica Giguere book.
Another couple
of listening presence.
Holy crap. My God. What'd you guys do? Screw it up as bad as I did Tomb? Or are they just that slow?
No, you're thinking the fact that Paying the Price came out a month ago.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
This is the book following Paying the Price.
Okay. All right.
So cool. the listeners are going to get a twofer.
Glad to hear Veronica is finally off her butt and doing her job.
Look at how you talk. You actually kiss your mother with that mouth.
I didn't say anything profane.
Yes, you did. You besmirched Veronica's reputation. And
I would never besmirch Veronica's
thing to do, Spuddo. You just wait till she narrates your next book.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
In this particular book, though, it's amusing listening to the bits that I have listened to, especially from the end of Paying the Price. I can only imagine how it's going for her in Reconnaissance and Force, because one of the point of view characters in this is named Veronica Giguere.
Oh, shit. We're talking about being meta.
Talk about being meta. Isn't it awesome?
Wow. Narrated by Veronica Giguere. Well, Veronica Giguere did this. Veronica Giguere did that.
Exactly so. So imagine my smile every time something like that is going to happen.
Oh, V, you must be just beside yourself, literally. Anyway. Well, I'm glad to hear you're finally getting the audiobook backlog cleared up. That's going to help a lot.
That's all Veronica. Now that she's full time, she's working on a whole bunch of projects and
getting them done.
I know that she's already laying out the script for Behind Enemy Lines, the most current book in the Empire series. And as we discussed, God, what was it when we were talking with John Miro and her? Yep. She wants to go ahead and do Imperial Marines when I bring it out, probably in December. So she'll be caught up by the time she gets to there.
Cool. So listeners, in all sincerity, if you have an audiobook and you want a female narrator, you need to talk to her.
You do. She is awesome.
Seek her out. She is awesome. I would not have paid her for Daemons of Garaga if I didn't believe that.
Put a link in the show notes.
Put a link in the show notes. Voices by Veronica. Imagine that. Anyway.
Is that her web address? Voices by Veronica?
I think it is. Is that right?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, V, if I totally screwed that up. Yeah,
let's look and make sure before we commit.
Voicesbyveronica.com. See, I remember their web, and you made me second guess myself because I couldn't third guess myself.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
So yeah, absolutely. Go listen to some of the samples of her work, which I'm sure are prominently displayed on her website somewhere.
Yes.
And if you think that your book is going to be something that that would be good for the two of you to collaborate on, send her a note.
Yeah, go for it. Do it.
Do it.
All right, I guess we should actually, like, I don't know, get into the show.
Gosh, it feels like we've got so much to talk about. And having already recorded the episode, I know, in fact, that is true.
So, listeners beware. What you're about to listen to is it started out focused and quickly turned into a ramble-a-thon.
Oh, it totally did not start out focused, which is usually how our conversations work.
Okay, we thought we were focused.
We thought we were talking about something completely different when we started recording the episode.
Well, that was part of it, yes. So anyway, behold the train wreck.
And here it comes.
Series that writing the end of a series, building these worlds, finding the things to go. This is actually you hosting this episode, so take us.
I have no idea where my series are going, because while I might have a grand ending that's obvious from the very inception, from the beginning of the book, it's not about the destination. Writing a series is about the journey. So you've got to have things that you're doing inside the book. The single novel has to have its own set of goals that are far short of where a series goal is. The Empire of Bones books, obviously the end of the story would be complete victory over the advanced intelligences that destroyed the old empire. That's not going to happen in a book. That's not going to happen in 5 books. That's not going to happen in 10 books. I've got to have other problems that crop up in the middle of this that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
Other goals that they have to achieve. And so you have to set a reasonable series of goals that perhaps you make up on the fly. That's what I do. I make up everything on the fly. I am a pantser at heart. When I start writing a book, I have no idea what the hell complications I'm going to introduce, but I do have to keep in mind that they have to fit the overall theme of the story and keep the readers happy, which is easy enough because it's keeping me happy. I know where I want the story to go, subconsciously or not. And so I continue to write towards those subconscious goals. I'm not afraid to let my inner storyteller, my 2-year-old writing companion, have free will to just go wherever the urge takes them to go.
That being said, with Empire of Bones, did you actually have an end in mind? Do you actually have how you think you want to end it? Do you actually have that? Or is it just a general sense of what goals need to finally be accomplished and what loose ends you need to tie up? Do you have any of that in mind, or is it just
general goals?
General goals.
I have general goals. Obviously, it's easy to say the supreme AI must die.
Right.
Okay, that's easy enough. How that happens, the circumstances that leads to it, the final confrontation, the complications that are no doubt going to pop up between here and there, no idea what those are. And that doesn't necessarily mean the end of the series either.
True.
Because I'm introducing aspects that could create problems beyond the AI.
Yeah, that might actually end up being another series.
Well, it depends on how you define series.
Let's not open up that can of worms right now.
Because let's say that it takes me 20 novels to write out the entire storyline from Empire of Bones to final victory over the AI that crushed the original empire. The original empire wasn't the only polity in the universe.
True.
The AIs have probably been maintaining the old empire's borders against the enemies. When that collapses, what happens next? Do the enemies of the old empire and perhaps the enemies of the AI that existed outside of it come right back in? So solving one problem will occasionally give you a bigger problem. And that's basically what I have in mind. And I don't know that that's actually a different series. It's like David Weber's Honor Harrington universe. You just keep developing like a film, the old style film. You put it in the solution and the picture slowly appears.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how not only a novel is written, that's how a series develops too. And the future is very hazy. It's like looking into fog. You can see what's close up. You may think you know what's coming around that curve, but it's probably going to be an elk.
It's a unicorn with a machine gun. We're all fucked.
It's cats with thumbs.
Yeah, there you go. Well, see, with something like Derelict, there has to be an end. There just has to be. Because
I defy you and say there does not.
No, there has to be an end, because once they've done what they've done on the ship, it has to end.
The story that you're telling there with the ship has to end. The
Exactly.
implications that are created and future plot lines that may derive from that do not.
But those are other series. Derelict itself has to end, because it would make no sense.
I think you are artificially limiting yourself in calling just the 3-book or 4-book, however many books, dealing with the Derelict as a series. I think you need to expand your definition of what's a series, because things can directly jump off from what happens in these stories. The characters can continue. Things that they find may drive them out of the solar system to do other things. You never know where it's going to go. Don't artificially limit and say, nope, series is these 3 books and I'm done.
Well, okay, so what you're describing is what I call a universe.
Yeah, and I see a universe as a series. Empire of Bones is going to be this huge epic affair of things that are happening. I'm not going to put artificial limits on saying the story stops here and I must have a different series to cover that. If I change characters, if I develop a new set of primary characters, then perhaps that is a different series. But I'm not going to let the other limit me.
And that's where kind of I think that Derelict's going to break off. And really, when we're talking about this, I'm talking about the title of the series. I can't go back and retcon that. It is what it is.
Ha! I change titles all the time. Ha, 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 ha. I'm an indie. I can do it, baby.
When the ship is no longer the primary focus, it doesn't make sense to keep it. It just doesn't make sense to me. I have already started work, well, mental work anyway, on what's going to happen after Derelict. After we get done with Mira and we move on from there, I've already got that set up. Now I do have my own issues that I have to work with, and some of those are business related. Because of the way contracts are written and decisions I have to make and things like that. So there are certain considerations that are outside of what you are talking about.
Sure.
And so I have a different problem set to deal with. And I'm going to be honest, those are my own making. I understand that. But at the same time, if I hadn't done it this way and what I did, I'm not really sure it would have been successful as it has been. But be that as it may, it doesn't matter. It's done. So I can't change it. So what I have to do is I have to think about how I'm going to go forward as far as, developing these books, developing these stories, and what I want to do with them. And, whether that's submitting it to Tor and trying to get in with them, whether it's going full indie, I haven't figured those things out yet, and I'm not going to figure them out. I'm not going to figure them out till I write the books. So
that's probably the best thing to do.
I'm probably not going to sell another book on spec, unless it's something that I know that I can get done very quickly, and I know it's something that's going to fall under the contract I already have. Unless I can wrangle a new contract for it. But Sever Press has first right of refusal on certain works. That's just the way publishers work. So we'll see how all that pans out. I'm not even going to try and explain it. It just is what it is. But when you write a series like Derelict, like Empire of Bones, I've called my universe Soul and Beyond for obvious reasons. And that kind of gives you an idea that already we're talking about stuff that's going on in the solar system, and we're talking about stuff ultimately that's going to go out beyond the solar system. So I've already got that set up. And the reason why I did it that way is because I'm going to deal with different timelines. Because I want to talk about how we got to where we are. You know, how the society came to be where it is, how the rise of the AI technology has changed humans and how they act. You know, basically how the machinery does stuff to us when we start automating ourselves out of jobs, when we start automating ourselves out of thinking. I want to talk about those things because I think they're very important issues that we need to deal with today. We need to start thinking about these things today. And so that's why, because I see possible outcomes of, you know, over the next 20 years, trying to you know, postulate what it's going to look like 20 years from now. And I want to get people thinking about that. And more importantly, I want to think about it. I want to see the possibilities and how I can see it going on. And it doesn't have to be a Skynet bullshit thing where it's, you know, the AIs are trying to kill humanity kind of thing. It doesn't have to be that same tired trope. It just doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be BSG. It doesn't have to be Terminator. It doesn't have to be any of that crap. It could be something that I want to do, that I want to see, because ultimately, this is going to sound really fucked up, but ultimately I am an optimist that things will work out. I describe myself as a cynical optimist, meaning that I think ultimately things are going to work out for the best, but they're going to go to absolute fucking shit before they get there.
Do you know what a pessimist is?
Pessimist is somebody who always thinks the worst things are going to happen in any situation.
A pessimist is an optimist with a sense of history.
I disagree with that. That's a cynic. That's a cynic, not a pessimist. And another way I heard it, Dr. Richard Henze, who was one of my favorite profs in college, he said, he gave the definition of pessimist and optimist. He said, you know what a cynic is? A cynic is an optimist who figured out that the world does not live up to their ideals. And I've kind of used that as my as my definitions for those things because it made so much sense to me at the time. Because I think when you're young, and this goes back to writing too. I think when we're young, we think to a certain extent that we can change the world, that we can have an effect, that we have ideals that can be lived up to, and that we can share with other folks.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you see those ideals actually practiced and they blow up, they explode. They just do not, the law of unforeseen consequences comes into play. And when that does, it really mars our sense of excitement for the future, our feeling that we can have an impact. And I think, you know, when you're young and idealistic, you really start looking at global stuff. And I think when you're older, you start to get the sense of how important the little things are, how important the you know, thinking local. And I think that also goes back to writing, because it's like when I was a kid and I was writing, I wanted to do this grand stuff, but I didn't want to talk about people. And then in my 20s, I figured out that people were more important. And I still try and do that. And while Derelict and the Black haven't had as much characterization as I would like them to, I feel like I'm trying to get readers a sense of who these people are and why that's important.
The problem that people have that are idealists is that they don't understand the scale of what they're trying to change when they're young. NASA has a program that they're going to try to work on for changing an asteroid that's on a collision course with Earth. Have you heard about this?
No, I assume it's a theoretical.
It is theoretical at this point, but what it involves is sending a small spacecraft out to orbit an asteroid that is a danger to the Earth. But it uses its own gravitational presence to, over time, slowly nudge just a teeny change in the course of an asteroid to, if you spot something many years out, cause it to just miss the Earth. And social change is very much like that. People go into this as young people thinking, I am going to change the world. Yes, you are going to change the world, but perhaps not during the first 2 or 3 decades of you trying, perhaps not even during your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Actions matter. Yeah. What you do changes society.
Right.
But the impacts, because there are billions of people and there's all that inertia, the social inertia of the world, those changes do not happen immediately. Right. They take time.
And that's kind of what I'm interested in doing with Soul and Beyond is showing how all these things pile up on one another to ultimately affect the future of humanity and how we go forward. And I think those are awesome things to do. And when you're talking about trying to move an asteroid, if it's 3 million kilometers out, all it takes is a 1/1,000,000th of a degree of change in trajectory to make it miss.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes. And so it's we can go back to the Armageddon bullshit of trying to blow the thing up in half and all this other kind of crap. I think what you're talking about, much more realistic and actually a lot safer.
Definitely a lot safer. Here's something else for you scientists or your science fiction writers to keep in mind. If you blow up an asteroid that's going to impact the planet,
any planet,
all of that material will still hit the planet. It will be like a shotgun blast, but the effects will be largely the same, whether it's in one piece or a billion pieces. If you're going to have an asteroid impact, your answers aren't blow it up. It's either hit or miss.
It's push. You want to push.
And I think that the NASA plan isn't even talking about, you mentioned a distance. They're talking in terms of decades, years and decades.
Yeah.
Finding asteroids whose orbits look like they're going to be threatening, send out this device as far in advance as they can, 20 years, 30 years, if they could figure it out that far in advance and make those changes, because a small spacecraft's gravitational impulse is going to just have an infinitesimal effect on a large asteroid, particularly one that would be something that could end life on Earth. What do they call this? An extinction level event?
An extinction event, yeah.
An asteroid that would be capable of creating an extinction level event, the one that struck the Yucatan, I believe was something like 10 kilometers across. Pretty damn big.
Yeah, and then there's also the Tunguska in Russia. Same kind of thing.
Sort of the same kind of thing. It was a much smaller asteroid that probably was not metallic cored because it exploded above the surface.
But even the shockwave of that probably just
it was a nuclear event. It was a nuclear event, nuclear level event.
Right. So it annihilated forests, it annihilated life in whatever the area the shockwave was. That's some pretty crazy shit. And it's stuff that you have to think about. I'm really pissed. Maybe you saw me post this because NASA just released a report. I wish they'd stop fucking figuring things out. They're killing me.
God damn it.
Exactly.
Science sucks.
The Proxima Centauri B has no habitable planets.
Bum, bum, bum.
Damn it, that's where it was sending Mira. What the hell? So now it's like,
here's the deal, bud. Ignore it. This is science fucking fiction.
I know it is. I know it is. It just makes me feel like a tool because I would have at least liked to have the books out for a decade before everything I put into them has been proven not to even be close to being true.
Here's what you do with a circumstance like that. You go ahead and you write it so that that's where they sent it anyway. And then you explain why they found there and how it proved the scientists of today wrong.
Well, I don't have to go into that. It's just because of, if you read Tomb, you'll find out why it's not necessary for me to go after that. But it just means that the back cover of Derelict, or the first book, Marines, where I talk about that, they're gonna be like, why were they going there? Didn't know there's something there.
Here's the thing that's going to save you. No one reads reports from NASA. No one knows you're safe.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's
right.
True. How many people do you know that have read that report?
They're
too busy on Twitter tweeting about something.
I assume the people who read my author page, because that's where I posted it.
You see, they're your own worst enemy right there.
I know, but it's actually fun to do that because it's like, these are things that are, pertinent to the stories that they're reading of mine. I assume that if they're on my author page, either they're there to see the crazy shit that I post, or their readers are really interested in knowing the kinds of things I'm thinking about, or that affect my imagination or my writing. So I post all that kind of stuff up there because I find it very, very fascinating, and I also want to get people excited about space, excited about science, excited about the ocean, excited about the environmental impacts. I want to have people excited about those things because I'm excited about them. And so I want to post all that science stuff because I think it's awesome to get people engaged and to stoke their imagination. Some of them may be writers, some of them may be creators who are could be inspired by some of that shit. And God knows I am. When I see some of these things, I'm like, oh boy, that gives me a bad idea for a story. And then I go and I write up the outline, put it in my to think about pile. And maybe a year or two down the road when I've got I'm ever going to run out of shit to write. When I get to a breathing point, it's like, I need to take a break from these series, whatever's going on. Let me go write this.
Well, here's one for you. Since we're going to throw this out, I know I've thrown out the pictures before and asked when you're going to write the story about this. Have you seen the pictures of Saturn's pole?
Yes.
The hexagonal shape to it.
Yes.
Obviously, there are aliens involved with this because that's some screwy shit right there.
There are so many things that the Cassini probe has uncovered, and it's uncovering more and more stuff every day as it approaches its terminus. It will die, by the way. It's going to enter into the Jupiter atmosphere, or excuse me, Saturnian atmosphere. Mm-hmm. It is going to die. I mean, there's no question. It is going to die hard. And actually,
they planned it out in advance.
Yes,
they know its end.
Right. They know it's going to die, and basically everybody's waiting for. I think it actually happens in September, like September 9th.
Not so far away. I don't believe you're wrong. It's not so far away, and that will be a sad, sad day.
Yeah,
because it's been amazing.
It was last year at Dragon Con where I went to the presentation the Cassini scientists gave, the Cassini mission scientists, and I've been keeping up with what it's doing. And it's damned exciting because it's all this stuff, all this research that they're piling together, and all these things we're finding out in our solar system. We're starting to find out that maybe we don't know as much as we thought we did.
As human beings, we should have realized that a long freaking time ago.
Well, you know how it is. It's like, okay, we observe gravity. We have no idea how it works. We think we know. We think we know how photons react, but when you start getting down to quantum mechanic levels, particles don't follow our model of reality. They just don't. So who's to say that some of these other things are going to? And that was part of the fun of playing with exosolar life and Derelict.
You know how my mind works. Just saying certain things gets my brain going off in tangents. Talking about quantum mechanics like that, it makes me wonder if quantum mechanics is the level of the universe that is divine. The thing where things are created and destroyed without realm or reason that we understand. But if you wanted to introduce a theological element into it, the quantum mechanics that underlies everything that no one understands is basically the scientific divine.
Yes, but that would not necessarily include God.
We are mere mortals. Who is to say what God truly is?
I don't believe in any of our current theories, so there you go.
You know what I believe? I'm going to go ahead and just throw out something here because we don't believe in holding back on this. I'm pretty much an agnostic. I believe that there is some greater power. I agree with you. We have no idea what it is. Everything that we've explored is probably completely and totally wrong. I just choose to believe that the universe didn't happen by accident. That's basically the sole limit of my belief structure right there.
Was it Einstein said God doesn't play dice with the universe?
Yeah, I think he did say that. Yeah.
That's why the quantum mechanics mystified him. He just couldn't get it.
Obviously, God was playing dice just to get his goat.
I would love to pose that question to Richard Dawkins and Chris Hitchens. Watch their fucking heads explode. It'd be fun. And don't get me wrong, I respect both of those gentlemen and their thought processes. I'm not even gonna start that particular war. I myself describe myself as a skeptic, but I'm also an explorer, if that makes any sense. Sure. And so I don't want to preclude that. I mean, that's why I write fiction. That's why I don't write nonfiction. I don't write scientific briefs. I don't do any of that shit because I want to explore ideas. I want to explore the feelings of all that. And then these universes, these series that create are all basic extensions of that, which I think is what they're supposed to be. And that's kind of how writers grow. And it doesn't matter if you're writing if you're just writing to get books out. I think that can still be part of that. I think you can have that kind of fun. It's not about what's possible. It's about what if.
Writing a series of books is an exploration.
Yeah.
It's not something that you've sat down and you filled 14 legal binders full of information about where every last little aspect of the story is going to have to go.
Oh, you are gonna get annihilated by some folks in the Facebook comments for saying that shit.
Bring it.
I guarantee you there's some outliner out there who's gonna have a conniption fit.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Writing a series is an exploration because, as I said at the beginning of this, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And somewhere along the way, you're going to see a promising path that diverges from anything that you had in mind. And you're just going to say, let's go see what's down this path. And you're going to head down that path, and your life will be forever changed as far as that story goes. I don't care how much control you think you have over the process. No one slavishly follows an outline.
I hope not.
I certainly hope not. Somebody will probably say, but I do. And I say, I don't think so.
You're telling me there's no serendipity in a 80 to 120,000 word novel. There is no moment of serendipity.
I call bullshit. That outlining, for those folks that outlining works, those people are setting some rough boundaries that they think their story will articulate. And as soon as they start writing in these stories, it's going to start diverging from where they thought it was going. And as long as you just keep an outline as a guide rather than a map that must be slavishly followed, I don't really have a problem with outlining. For me, it ruins my creativity because I've already done the fun part. I've told the story. Right. If I outline, I've told the story. I know where it's going. I want to be surprised. Just like a reader, I want to read the book and I don't want to know what happens next. I want to have the capacity to go flip the page and go, what? No, that did not just happen. And I want that as a writer too.
Do you think there's going to be a moment, bringing this back to series, is there a moment where you think you know the ending and you discover you didn't?
Every single novel, every single story, I think I know what the ending is. And until I'm at the 3/4 mark, I don't know shit. It's never even been close. Never even been close. When I get to the 3/4 mark, I can start having an idea of where the story in that novel ends. And it is usually, in fact, I'll say it's always something radically different than what I had even in mind when I started writing the first chapter.
So you're all right. I guess maybe this brings it back to where we were talking about before we started this. Excuse me, before we took a break. I usually have an idea for how the conflict is going to resolve itself. I usually have that idea. I've said this before. Sometimes I start stories just because I saw an image in my head, or I heard somebody say something, or my brain just said something to me, and it just came out of left field, and it gave me an image. It gave me some idea that I wanted to explore, and how to get to that idea, how to get to that across, how to get to that image. And those moments have been awesome in a lot of ways, because they give birth to just wild narrative that you would never have thought of otherwise. You would never have dreamed of it. Even, reading and watching all these different series or whatever else, those moments of serendipity that happen there are the most important, because that's what gives me the idea to write a series or write a book or write about these characters or anything else. The ending of a series, if you're writing a closed series, and Terry is not a big believer in closed series. He and I have a different philosophical cast on this. We've argued about it before. And really,
I am a commercial author.
Yeah.
Long unopened series are my friend.
Yes. And I understand that. But I'm also looking at it from Peter F. Hamilton's world and how he does what he does.
That hack, look at what he does. What is he doing? He's working at McDonald's now.
Yeah, right.
I have no idea what Peter
putting out books and making more money than either of us. That's what he's doing.
That's true.
And he works with closed series. He gives you 3 or 4 monstrous books to create a world, create a universe, and then shuts the door on it. Bastard. Now, what he'll do is he will take items from that universe and then start another series, maybe even in that universe, that takes place 1 billion years after the previous books, 1 billion years before it, or completely different part of the galaxy, but it's still the same universe with the same laws and rules. Nothing wrong with that in my mind. I think it actually allows you to get closure, and I like the idea of having that. The Black is a really good example of that. I don't want to write the Black forever. There's only so many times I can tell that story. It has to have an end.
It's not a story of optimism. It's a story of survival, and a fight for survival does end. Whereas a story of optimism, one way or another. Whereas a story that's based on triumphing and optimism has a more open-ended set of choices at the end.
But Derelict is the same way of the Black, in my mind.
I think it says something about you, sir.
Maybe it does, but it's a story of survival. But I mean, there are certain things I want to talk about with certain characters, and the series just wouldn't make sense if it continued on, because there's some the series I want to write about the AIs that takes place like 100 years before Derelict, before the creation of the trio. It can't go on forever. It has to stop there because I need to get to the point where we explain some of the things, how the sentient AIs and their uneasy relationship with humanity, how that started and what it led to. And what it led to is very easy to see in Derelict. By the time I finish Derelict, it will be pretty damned obvious what I was going for. But I want to go back and I want to see how it got there, because I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about exploring those ideas. And I don't think it spoils either series. It's just a question of, I want to write that and work on it, but it takes place before, and there's only so many books in that. It just are, because I'll get either bored, they'll get derivative, or I'll jump the shark. And so I want to close those off. And the other reason is because if I close it off, I can go work on something else and not feel guilty about really leaving the readers hanging. You know what I'm saying?
What the secret to avoid jumping the shark? Don't be stale. Always be growing. The characters have to be evolving from what they are. Princess Kelsey is definitely not the same character she was when the story started.
Right.
And she's not the same character that she's going to be in 5 books. She's going to continue to change with the environment, and her choices are going to evolve as well, the things that she has to do. And I think that's how you keep a story from being stale is there has to be a natural progression, a natural evolution. Mm-hmm. If you try to keep things the same because you think you've hit upon a certain way, a certain flavor of telling that story that is going to be where you need to be, then you're not growing as an author.
Sure.
You have to continually be trying to learn new things, to learn better ways of telling the story, to pay attention to whether the story you're telling is working. Mm-hmm. And that's really the whole art of writing a series, is taking that initial seed, growing it into a plant, and turning it into a jungle.
Right. But if you're writing about a single threat, the threat either destroys everything or they find a way to triumph over it.
It's like the sinking of the Titanic. The ship is going down or the ship is not going down. One way or the other, that has a very limited set of things that you can do. There is an end one way or another in sight.
And that explains exactly what I'm doing with Derelict in the Black. It has to just close off, because there may be something after that I do with those characters. Yes. There may be something I do after with that universe that I've set up, or the consequences of how those series end.
Consequences might be better for you.
Right. But the series has to end because the threat has to be dealt with in that kind of book. It's
in
a different
way. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's a different kind of book. And I hate to say this because I don't like being I consider myself I love characters and I want to spend more time with them. But with this stuff that I've been writing, the commercial fiction I've been writing, it has been thrillers, and thrillers, just suspenseful thrillers. You're going to have a threat that continues to, swirl around the characters and everything else. And you don't necessarily get time to deal with the characters the way you'd want. I wish I had time for more characterization with these folks, but then the book wouldn't move as fast, and it wouldn't accomplish the things that I'm trying to accomplish and that my audience likes.
Frankly, I think it's a good thing that you don't spend more time with the characters, because that's how serial torturers happen.
Explain serial torturers in this context.
Well, those people that, go out and kidnap people and keep them in their basement, chained up there, and cut them up until they finally die and then go get a new one.
Yeah. And that one, I don't want to be that person. That's what I'm saying.
A little late for that.
Well, like with the Tony Downs stuff I want to write, that's pretty much an open-ender. It doesn't have to have that kind of there's not a single threat. There's so many things I can do with that character. And so I can get to spend time with that character.
A series, basically, when you start writing it, for the most part, is either going to be open or closed. Just like a certain environmental, I'm thinking I'm getting those phrases from environments. It's either a closed environment or an open environment.
Right.
And while it's not 100% true for storytelling, when you start writing, you'll know whether or not there are hard boundaries to the story. Occasionally you'll chance across something and go, wait, I can make this much larger. Mm-hmm. I can make this significantly bigger. And sometimes when you think you're writing something open-ended, something horrible happens and it closes off a bunch of options. And so you may find that you've written yourself into a corner and suddenly you're in a closed environment.
Right.
But for the 90% of people, you'll know the moment you put down the first word whether or not this is potentially an open-ended series or not.
And, I don't think there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just a question of what you're trying to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it. If you started out writing a closed series and it turns out that it open ends, so what? Go with it, and vice versa. Just go with it. I mean, the first 3 Black books were all closed, very closed, where the characters in all 3 of them, and it really pissed me off because I felt like I was being derivative of myself. But the characters are trapped. They're trapped with a creature that they don't understand, that doesn't make any sense to them, and is inherently dangerous in everything that it does. But they're trapped. And so it is, again, survival. It is, what do we do to get out of this? What can we do to get out of this? And how many of us are going to walk away when it's done? And that's that's the typical monster story. You know, it's typical monster series if you start looking at it. I mean, you know, every Godzilla story is the same goddamn story. You know, monster shows up, Godzilla fights the damn thing, Godzilla wins, Godzilla goes away. It's almost every one of them. And that and people love it. They keep coming back and they want more Gojira movies. They want to write, they want to see it more. And that's a lot of what the whole kaiju subgenre is it's just about the monsters show up, they duke it out, and you're done. And some people get trampled in the process. And sometimes the humans have a role in eliminating the threat, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just bystanders. And part of the story is how they survive during the clash. But really, the main drivers of the story are the two threats or multiple threats coming together and dealing with one another. And it's out of the hands. That's fine. That is a subgenre I'm not really interested in writing. But I can tell that facets of it are going to show up in Soul and Beyond because humanity's fucked. They just don't know it yet. But you know, the bottom line is that when you start looking at these things, you have to. I mean, actually, there is no have to. Follow it. Just go where it leads you. And I'm my own worst enemy with this because I want to have too much control in some cases. And like we talked about earlier, it's putting down the next sentence. And I think the most successful writers probably do that. I don't know for sure. But that's kind of the way that I look at it. And it's something I've been fighting with. I've really been fighting with this, and it makes me struggle. It's one of the reasons why Outbreak literally almost killed me. It's one of the reasons why I've been having difficulty getting into Destruction because I'm overthinking it. And it's the same
sentence.
And it's the same way one of the reasons why I found it so difficult to get back into Flames. So yeah, write the next sentence, let the next thought just roll. Even if it's wrong, it'll lead you somewhere. I dumped
revise something once it's on the page.
I wrote an entire chapter where I talked about that room earlier. I wrote the chapter where they skipped the room. And I threw it away. And I rewrote it where they went into the room. Because it just made more sense considering what they've been doing. And I think I was trying to save myself some trouble of coming up with a new threat. And once I got the new threat, I was like, oh yeah, this is all going to end badly for everybody and everything. And I like it. So there's a lot of things that go along with that. And I don't really see a problem with it. And I think folks should, writers, we've gotten in the Facebook group. How do you end this? Well, how does it end? Do you have to know? Just
I say
keep
no.
writing it. Yeah. Terry says just, fuck worrying about this, that, and the other and go with it. I as much as you hated The Strain, okay, the book, the story arc is actually very interesting.
Yes. The characters were the problem, not the story.
The characters for you were the problem. I had no problem with the characters or the story. Once you get to the last book, holy shit, are things fucked up. The second book is called The Fall for a reason. And the third book had this really interesting interplay of these ideas. And I saw where it was kind of going very early on, but the journey was so much fun. But it had to end. It had to freaking end. They did it as a trilogy. It's done. It's over. There's no going back. There's no books that will ever come out of
sure, when humanity is extinguished and there's nothing left, of course there's no going back.
I'm not going to say a damn word. If you haven't read the Strain trilogy, you've only watched the TV show, whatever, or never heard of it, you should go take a look at The Strain, the first book, because I think it's probably the most ingenious vampire like story that has come out. I think it is. It got me excited because it just basically blew the lore out of the water and used a simple premise, and then it got complex and crazy in a big way.
Yeah, if only the characters were weren't such whiny little people.
Anyway, I'm going to go beyond that. I still understand how you got that idea. I really don't, but we'll be that as it may. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. You're just wrong. We'll just go with that.
Sure. Let's go with that. Talking about how things evolve as you're writing, anyone that reads my novels may not recognize this, but usually about, I don't know, the halfway point, somewhere in the middle of the book, I will introduce some major reveal, some big change. And it's not something I plan on. I start writing the story. Things are growing from it. I get it somewhere in the middle of the book and I'll go, hey, what if I do this thing? This would be cool. And some big thing happens. And then the course of the story shifts and changes and it's suddenly shooting towards a conclusion.
Right.
And it happens in every book. I can never tell you what it's going to be when I'm writing it, but it happens in every book. And I've only recently become aware that I actually do that. Don't try to overthink your process. Let your inner storyteller tell the story they want to tell.
Well, see, it's really interesting because like even on the Facebook group and whatnot, and as long as I've been writing and talking with other writers, they want to know how you deal with this. I don't know how I do what I do.
It's hard knowing how you're going to do the process. You can give them details of, I just sit down and I start telling the story. And for me, I'm looking out a couple of scenes, a couple of chapters ahead, saying I can clearly see what's going to happen here. Everything else is a fog. I'm basically driving down a foggy road. I don't know what the big curves are coming up. I'll occasionally see a sign that's telling me there's a curve ahead. Sometimes I get to the bridge and it's out. That's a problem.
Sometimes the bridge is there and you blow the fucker up.
Actually, that's you. You're Paul Cooley. You blow the bridges up.
Nuke it from orbit, baby. It's the only way to be sure. But I think there is a certain amount of deconstruction that I enjoy of how I did something, because when I read another book or watch a film, there's sometimes where I go back and I'm cognizant of, I take a look at why I did something and whether or not it made sense or it worked or anything else. And I do some analysis on that. I do that. Maybe I shouldn't, but
I don't think you should.
The literary critic in me is kind of looking at my work and comparing it to some other things and trying to figure out how to get better. I just stop that. Stop doing that.
Anytime the word critic comes out of your mouth, you should immediately realize I've done something wrong.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. For instance, I've become very aware that there's certain things I do in dialogue. There are certain comments I make on people's body language when they're speaking. There are certain ways I say things. And when I read them aloud, I go back and I think, it just doesn't sound as good as I want it to.
Mm-hmm. And
so
there's nothing wrong with that. What I'm objecting to, and it's a mindset sort of thing. When you use the word critic, you need to be aware that a critic goes into something looking for flaws. He's not looking for you to improve. He's saying, what don't I like? You see it with movie critics all the time. What they're doing is they're saying, this is what failed. They're going into something with a negative mindset and looking for things that are failing. And as a writer, yes, we need to be aware of things that we can fix, that we can make better. But we write at the level that we currently have. Our skill set, our talent as a writer is based on where we are in our journey of being writers. When we notice something that we're not precisely happy with, we make a note, we strive to get better in the next book.
Right.
When you go in as a critic, you're saying, what can I do to fix it here? And I think that is a mistake to think that way.
Okay, so I think we're talking about two different things.
Could be. I'm just making a point to expand on what I was saying, not saying that you do it.
What I'm saying is, for instance, when I'm going and working on a new book now, and or even reading or listening to a book, is if there's something the author does that I don't like, I try and keep in mind that I didn't like that. Therefore, I don't want to do it. Right. And there are other things where if I'm reading something aloud of mine and I didn't like how it sounded, but I don't know how to fix it or how to rewrite the sentence or have a clue on how to do that, I will I will take that with me when I'm listening or reading another book. Because if the author did something that I liked that solves that problem, then it's something I want to try and put in my toolbox to use later.
And that's the way to do it.
And that's the kind of literary criticism I'm talking about. It's being a little more studious and a little bit more aware of what you do. I'm sure there are writers out there whose voices are perfect. I'm not one of them.
There are no, there is no perfection.
Well, I'm just saying it's like Matt Wallace. I love the way he writes. I can't write that way, but I love the way his sentence structures work. I love the way his characters interact, and I try and learn from what he's done there. But his writing style itself is Matt. That is just Matt. That's the way he writes. That's the way he thinks subconsciously, and that's the way it all pours out. I don't know if the man does any of this kind of second guessing or looks at stuff and says, how can I do this better? I don't know. And it doesn't matter. The bottom line is when I read his work, I'm looking at what I enjoy out of it and seeing how I can try and apply that to what I do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's impossible because we tell completely different kinds of stories, which is fine. But I'm very cognizant of what it is he's doing, and I like looking at those things of authors, so how they explain or how they get across what a character's feeling or what they're seeing, or even how they make toast in the morning. I want to pay attention to those kinds of things because those little details are stuff that I think I need to do better in my work. And so it's just a matter of every book I'm going to try, every story, every time I write, I'm going to try and put more of that stuff take more of that stuff along with me.
I think the best way that I can answer that is that while what I'm saying may just be semantics, I think it's an important distinction. What you're doing is not being a critic. What you are doing is you are being a student and a scholar. Mm-hmm. And you are looking at other works saying, what nuggets can I pull from these things? You're not going in as a critic with a negative thought.
No.
It's an important distinction to say. When you're saying I'm being a critic, I really think you need to throw that word out of your vocabulary and realize that what you're doing is you're learning from other authors, which you already said, this, but that is totally different than being critical of.
And yet at the same time, that's exactly what literary criticism is. I'm serious.
That's your problem. You brought literary into this. God bless.
Look, regardless of the term, it is about going back and deconstructing what an author was doing. It does not have to come from a negative place at all.
It should. I think that it should never come from a negative place.
And there's a reason why I stopped writing reviews for things I don't like, because it seems unnecessary, and it seems just like you're trying to be a sadist because somebody created something you didn't enjoy and you want to punish them for it. I would rather talk about what excites me, what I liked, these little things that these little stupid horror movies occasionally are coming out. I call them stupid, but I enjoyed the hell out of them because they were so out of left field in the way and considering what they had to work with and how they did it. I want to tell people about those things. I want to tell them what to look for that I enjoyed in those stories. And it obviously doesn't have to be horror. I'm just saying in these low budget films that most people don't even know exist. I want to talk about the ones I really enjoyed. I want to talk about why I enjoyed it or why I think I enjoyed it. And the same thing with books. Occasionally you'll come across an indie title that's out there for 99 cents and it'll be something glorious. And you're like, wow, this was incredible. Why the hell is this person selling this for 99 cents? I need to tell everybody to go get this. You have to look for the things that excite you as a writer, as a creator. And I think that those are the things you should investigate and spend the most time on, is finding those things that you can take the positive elements from. I don't want to sit there and make a 10-minute YouTube video about why, something sucked. It just doesn't help. I don't
and it
think it
doesn't teach you
helps.
anything as a writer.
No, it doesn't. You can look at it and go, well, that was a train wreck. And maybe you'll get an idea of hey, I don't want to do that in my book. But I think it's much better to look at what you do want to do in your book, what you do want to do in your writing, what you can do to make yourself a better creator and a better writer. And that is just paying attention to what's going on and everything else. That's why, besides the fact that you and I enjoy stories, I think that's also one of the reasons why we do read, why we do listen, why we do watch, why we do pay attention. And sometimes it's just very subconscious. I mean, there are movies where I'll be like, okay, this is going to be ridiculous. Shut off the inner critic who says that, oh, wow, this is not even, plausible. And you're like, wait a minute. We've already got aliens talking and doing something. I think plausibility left the building a long time ago, as far as our current science goes. So I'm going to give the storyteller the benefit of the chance. What'd you say?
I said,
oh, I thought you made some mumble.
No, actually, I coughed. There was no ulterior motive.
Oh, it's one of those things where you're going to cough and then mention something that fit exactly what I described.
No. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
I was thinking about that while I was in Europe. We'll talk about that later. It was Freud. God damn it. That's what.
Well, of course it was Freud.
No. This goes back to something I was talking about with my dad last
Aha, he says.
We'll get to that after this episode.
Apropos of nothing.
Apropos of nothing. Exactly. Sorry, I'm jet lagged. Give me a break. I'm lucky I'm even talking.
The way that I am different than you in approaching others' works is because I'm such a subconscious storyteller. I don't read stories saying, what can I improve? I don't try to deconstruct the other people's work. I read it, and when I enjoy something, I believe that something of the way they told that story seeps into my subconscious, and my inner 2-year-old goes, I could use that. Mm-hmm. I can do that. And that's how I improve as a writer, not through consciously trying to find things, but by looking as I'm doing it, saying, this just doesn't seem right. Let's do this other thing instead.
And there's a reason why I will read something more than once. There's a reason why I will watch something more than once. It's because the first time I went through, I wasn't paying attention. I was just enjoying it. And then there are times where I want to go back and I want to revisit it. And I want to figure out why it worked and what mechanisms the writer did that worked for me, because there are things that I want to take along with me. It's not a matter of constantly deconstructing it. For me, it's just on a kind of a case-by-case basis, if you will. I just watched Rogue One on the way back from Europe. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that is such a fucking coolie ending. Bravo. Because I thought
it was a World War II movie set in the Star Wars universe.
I thought it was just going to be more Star Wars bullshit where everybody walks away, happy and clean and blah, blah, blah. That it was not that movie. And I was very, very happy about that. It really was a good thing for me, because it kind of rejuvenated my interest in the universe a little bit. So I just think that there's moments where you can really learn something and mm-hmm. take it with you.
When that happens for me, I don't go back and I don't reread things for the intention of learning something. But when I find myself having read something and I lean back in my chair and go, whoa, what just happened there? Mm-hmm. I'll pause and I'll think, what really just happened? What did they do? What evoked this thing in me, and try to figure it out on the spot. And then I'll move on and get into reading the rest of the story while smiling, because right. I've been totally impressed. And that does tend to happen sometimes with negative things in books too. I'll sit back and go, oh, that's not good. That was a blunder. That's not promising.
That's an oops.
And more times than not, while it might be a matter of personal taste, when I sit back in a book and go, uh-oh, that's usually a good precursor to I'm not going to enjoy where it goes from here.
Yeah, true. I'll give you that one.
We kind of need to drag it to a halt. We've been talking for a while, Spud.
We have. We've been talking for a long time. I just checked the time and was like, holy shit, we've been once again babbling like crazy.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks. You know, all this show is a conversation between two writers talking about our art.
Oh man. People must be very disappointed.
Some people just don't need to know how the sausage is made.
Others want to know, and well, we're here for you.
What are in those ballpark franks, after all?
I just wrote a description of a character in Flames who looked like a pork loin shoved into a too small bag. Wow. Something along those lines. I think it was like a sausage stuffed into a Ziploc. I can't remember what it was, but yeah. And where did that come from?
Why do I have a visual of, you know, somebody putting a plastic bag over your head and yanking it back like this, so you're like,
yeah, that works too. But the reason why that came into my mind is I opened up my fridge and there's a pork loin in there and it looks like it's ready to just burst out of the bag. And it's like, that's exactly what that character's like. The clothes are just way too tight and it's too large to fit in.
Folks, this is looking behind the Paul E. Cooley curtain. There's inherent risks in this.
Yeah, right. Close this thing up.
I wasn't running the show. You're running the show.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I was hosting this disaster. Never mind. If you have a comment, complaint, or question, you can reach us at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley, or you can join the listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group, where all the crazy happens and questions get asked, like what we were talking about today. It was all kind of tied together, believe it or not. There was a
kind of.
There was a madness to our method, I promise. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention our wonderful host, Podhoster, who makes all 5,000 billion gazillion episodes of the Dead Robots Society available for your ear holes.
And don't forget our glorious patrons. You can sign up at Patreon at patreon.com/DRS podcast.
Correct. You got that right. And speaking of, since Terry interrupted me, speaking of our patrons, we have to mention our wonderful $10 patrons, $10 a month. They helped us buy an 8 terabyte drive so that we could actually continue doing this show and I wouldn't lose anything in the video editing.
They created Skynet. This is their fault.
And they are Isabel Cushy, Robert Slade. Really?
I'm waiting for the in quotation marks, guy.
Caleb, Boner, James. Why, Caleb? Why do you do this to me? Chris Winder, like winding a clock, not blowing in the wind. Sue Bayman, Andre Conde Moraes, who told me I was actually pronouncing the name correctly. Thank you.
Woo!
Yeah, I no longer have to say, please correct me. I have no idea how to pronounce this. DJ Chamberlain, J.R. Hanley, John Kilgallen, and I think I just annihilated your name. I apologize. Drew Bernardi, who's new. Thank you, Drew.
Welcome, Drew.
And, of course, my favorite name to say, Jonathan Zarusin. Those are our $10 patrons as of this moment. And like Terry said, if you would like to join the become a patron of the Dead Robot Society, where you can get the podcast episodes early, get invited to live show or once a month live shows.
And you can send us questions when we announce guests.
That too, as well as get the unedited, unexpurgated. Oh my God, how do these boneheads do this show?
Unforgivable.
Yeah, forgivable versions of the episodes. And you can do that at patreon.com/DRS podcast for as little as $1 a month. So check them out. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast. Thank you for all the subscribers and the new viewers. We're glad to have you and hope you stick around and enjoy the show. There we go.
Bye, everybody. See you again next week.
Yeah, with that, we will see you next week. Much to your chagrin. Bye.